Long before the War of the Ring, before the fall of Gondor and the rise of Mordor, there was another war, one not fought by hobbits or hidden in the shadows, but waged openly between the most powerful kingdom of men that ever existed, and Sauron, at the height of his early power. The Númenóreans were not like other men. They were taller, wiser, and longer lived, a gift from the Valar themselves. They sailed east in mighty fleets, built great cities along the coasts of Middle-earth, and for a time they kept Sauron in check. But as their pride grew, so too did their fear of death. And it was this fear that Sauron would twist to his advantage. This is the story of that forgotten war, the first great clash between Númenor and Mordor, and the beginning of Sauron's long deception. Hello everyone, and welcome to Storyteller's Codex. Here, we delve deep into the rich lore of The Lord of the Rings, A Song of Ice and Fire, and the vast worlds beyond. Welcome. The Númenóreans were descended from the Oberyn, the noble houses of men who had aided the elves against Morgoth in the First Age. As a reward, the Valar granted them a new land, Númenor, an island in the middle of the Great Sea. There they built a kingdom unlike any before. Their ships sailed farther than any others, their cities gleamed with wisdom and craft, and their lives were long, sometimes over 300 years. But they were also forbidden to sail west, toward the Undying Lands, for that gift was not for mortal kind. Over time, that boundary would come to trouble them deeply. After Morgoth was cast into the void, his chief servant Sauron remained behind. At first he went into hiding, but the desire for order and dominion still burned within him. He took up a fair form, calling himself Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, and began to seduce the elves with promises of knowledge and power. In secret he forged the One Ring, pouring much of his own strength into it. With it he sought to dominate all life in Middle-earth. He raised armies, built the fortress of Barad-dûr, and declared himself Lord of the Earth. As Sauron's power grew, the Númenóreans also began to change. They sailed often to Middle-earth, at first as teachers and helpers, but over the centuries their tone shifted. They established forts along the coasts, extracted tribute, and looked upon the people of Middle-earth with growing disdain. Sauron, threatened by their presence, began stirring resistance. The men of the East worshipped him as a god, and he forged alliances in the darkness. Small skirmishes turned into open defiance, and Númenórean garrisons came under attack. The two powers were now firmly on a path toward war. By the time of King Ar-Pharazôn, Númenor had reached the height of its power. Sauron had declared himself King of Men, a title Ar-Pharazôn could not allow. He sailed to Middle-earth, not with envoys, but with a vast armada. The hosts of Mordor, so often victorious, scattered before Númenor's banners. Sauron, seeing he could not win by force, humbled himself before the king. He was taken as a prisoner, brought across the sea to Númenor. But the war was not over. In truth, it had only changed form. In Númenor, Sauron was no prisoner. He became a trusted advisor, whispering flattery and false wisdom. He taught the king that the Valar had deceived them, that death was a curse, and immortality could be taken by force. A great temple was built to Melkor, and sacrifices were made in secret. The faithful, those who remained loyal to the Valar Sóstacsan, were hunted. At last, driven by fear of death, Ar-Pharazôn sailed west, seeking to take the Undying Lands. But the world was changed. Númenor was swallowed by the sea, and Sauron's body was destroyed. Though Númenor fell, not all of its people were lost. The faithful, led by Elendil and his sons, escaped the cataclysm and landed in Middle-earth. There they founded two kingdoms, Arda in the north and Gondor in the south. They brought with them knowledge, power, and a deep memory of what had been lost. Sauron, though bereft of form, had not perished. He returned in shadow, and war once again darkened the land. It was the sons of Númenor, alongside the elves who formed the last alliance, and it was their blades that broke Sauron's body once more. The war between Númenor and Sauron was more than a battle of armies. It was a struggle between wisdom and pride, between the fear of death and the acceptance of fate. Though the island fell, its legacy lived on, in Gondor, in the line of kings, and in the final defeat of Sauron at the end of the Second Age. But the shadow that fell on Númenor would never fully lift. The fear that Sauron once kindled in the hearts of men would echo through the ages. The first War of the Ring was not won with swords alone. It was a war of spirit, and its lessons were long and bitter. If you're interested in The Lord of the Rings or A Song of Ice and Fire, click one of the links on the screen to dive deeper into the lore. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you next time.